thing I want to do is just make a quick video about the dojo survey form. So we'll just kind of get started and build it out. So this is the project that we're going to build. We use dojo survey. I'm going to use a virtual environment manager called, I think it's called virtual environment manager, but basically it requires us to turn on a virtual environment. And I can do it from anywhere, unlike how we've had you guys set things up, which is having a virtual environment folder that you go into and turn things on. But that's not super important. What is important is that we have the right things. We have Flask in that environment effectively. And so kind of how we're going to attack this is we're going to build out these two HTML pages. And I'm going to talk about passing data back and forth from Python and back to a page. So those are kind of the key things is basically, hey, how do I approach this thing? Make sure that we have a virtual environment working. And then passing data back and forth from what looks like just two basic HTML pages, but really it goes through our server. All right, so let's go for it. So I'm going to start over here. So I just have this demos page. So we're going to make a new directory. Let's call this thing 17 underscore survey form. And I'm going to go inside that directory. Cool. And then this is where I'm going to turn on my virtual environment. Again, the way that we would have you guys do it is go to a virtual environment folder, turn it on, and then navigate to the project that you're actually going to be working on. But work on Py2 Flask. Cool. All right, so notice this parentheses that popped up over here. Well, that's the virtual environment being active. And I'm going to start Atom from my command line. And it's just going to create a new Atom folder, and you'll see that pop up in just a second. Cool, so there's our folder. And with Atom, you just right-click on your tree there, create a new file. And I just generally call this thing server.py. All right, so this is going to be the server. So it's going to be a Flask server. So I have a bunch of shortcuts, but this stuff's all in the platform. So, but basically what it says is from Flask, import a bunch of different things. Flask is kind of what's going to listen to make it a server. Render template is going to allow us to render HTML tags. And so the HTML information goes through a renderer called Jinja2. And Jinja2 will take kind of Python things that we pass to that HTML and turn them into HTML for us before it gives it back to the client, before it returns it to the server. Request takes information in. Redirect allows us to go somewhere else. Session allows us to store stuff for a longer period of time. And Flash allows us to store stuff for a short period of time. All right. So we're not going to use Flash. Session requires this secret key. And let's go forth. All right. So great. So there's our server. And interestingly, right now, we could actually start our server up if we wanted to. So going back to terminal, we can say something like Python server.py. And there it is. It's running. We couldn't go to localhost 5000 and get any response. It just give us an error because we don't have anything listening there. But it works. So I'm going to close it with Control-C. All right. Going back over to here. So let's make our first app, or our first route. So, well, let me do two more things. So let me turn that back on and show you what happens when we go to localhost 5000. All right, so that's what we get. We get this error popping up. All right, so let's fix that error. So this was a get method because we asked it directly from the terminal through the URL bar, and that's always a get method. So it basically says, hey, this is a get, and if you leave something blank, it's basically going to slash. Same result there. So what we want to say is, hey, at app.route, and when you go to slash with a methods that include get, and this is a default, so you don't actually need this line, but this is what happens behind the scene. I'm just going to say default method. All right, so it basically says, hey, listen to this route and do a few things beforehand, and then do this, def index. Whatever, we can call this thing whatever we want, and return the string hello world. So now, hopefully, when we go to localhost 5000, we'll see hello world being returned because we're basically returning whatever's returned here. All right, so let's go and check that out. So now if we go to localhost 5000, there's our hello world. That's great, it's fine, but it's really not very HTML-like. So Flask has made that easier for us. So let's go ahead and check that out. So this render template can basically take an HTML file and, as I said, add Python things to it, and then return it and render it. So render template automatically looks into a folder inside of your project that's adjacent to server.py. So new folder, and that folder is always called templates. There, we've created it. And let's just create a new file inside of that called index.html. Cool. So there it is. So inside of that, now our server.py, instead of returning hello world, let's render a template. And let's render index.html. All right, index.html is blank right now, but it still should render. So now we should just see a nothing pop up. Right, so if we look at index.html, nothing's on there. Server.py says, when you go to this route, this method runs, and blammo, this template gets rendered, and that template has nothing inside of it. So let's do it. Oh, there it is. Nothing. Big, fat nothing. All right. Cool. Well, we can look at our project and say, well, we don't want nothing to render. We want this to render, right? We want this whole, like, your name, form, all that fun stuff to render. So let's make that render. All right, so a bunch of shortcuts, but don't stress too much about them. Both Sublime and Atom basically say if you type in either exclamation point or HTML or triple exclamation point, one of those three things will generally be able to make a quick key to generate all this information. So let's call this thing a title of survey form, and then let's just make inside of it a form. All right, so action. Right now, let's just give it an action of slash submit survey. And we need a few things into it, right? So I'm not going to do any awesome styling or anything. Really, really basic, just to kind of get us going. But so let's make a unordered list. And inside of that, let's have a bunch of list items. I think we're going to need 5 of them. My little quick shortcuts are not working because I don't have them set up right. So let me just fix this. So HTML, there we go. And now I can do that. All right, so inside our first list item, let's have an input type. And we're going to have it type text. And then we'll have, let's change this back to HTML Django. A name of name. And we don't need a value right now because that's going to be filled in by us. And we'll maybe say something like name. All right. We're going to have another one. And instead of being an input type, let's have this thing as a comment. And we'll say, hey, let's make a text area. And let's go use the default text area situation, because it gives us the rows and columns automatically. So name, comment. All right. Clean that up a little bit. Now text areas, if you add extra space, like if I put an enter here, that would be picked up as part of the text area. And so it would give you 4 extra spaces or an enter. And we don't really want that. So I'm going to move this down to the bottom here. All right. The other 2 fields that we want in our form, let's take a look at it. Well, we want dojo location and favorite language. All right. So those are both selection types of tags. So we can do selection. And then it has a name as well. So let's say this as language. And we'll have an option in here. And we're going to give it a value. And we're going to say JavaScript. And we'll put JavaScript here. And let's make this correctly cased. Cool. And we're going to make one more of these options. We don't have many choices right now. We're just going to Python as our second option. And then location, we have a bunch of things that we can put in our locations. So that's totally fine. So let's just copy this code here. And we're going to change this from language to location. And then instead of JavaScript, we're going to have Seattle and San Jose. And we'll just say Seattle and San Jose. Cool. All right, so now our locations are going to be these things. And the last one we need is an input type submit. And it doesn't need a name, it just needs the value. Submit survey. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what our page looks like now. So now when we go to localhost 5000, hopefully we'll see a little form pop up. Cool. It's not the best form, you know, I didn't do any styling here, it has those annoying dots. Now, if we hit submit survey, we're going to say, hey, it's going to try to go to a route. And the route that it's going to try to go to is submit_survey. Now, what happens here is because this has the slash here, it says starting from the root, try to find some way to do submit survey. And it hunts down, since we're actually sitting on localhost 5000, it tries to hunt into our server and find something that matches that. So obviously all right now we have is this slash, so it doesn't have anything, and so what we're going to get when we submit the survey is some sort of error. And there it is, that not found error. So it doesn't have any way to do anything with submit survey. So let's make some way to do submit survey. So at app.route submit _survey. And then we can say, hey, def submitted my survey. And we're going to do something with that. Right now we're going to print request.form. All right, so I'll tell you right now this is not going to work. And we're going to return form submitted. All right, but I'm going to run it anyways, just to kind of show you what happens and why it doesn't actually work. All right, so it looks like it ought to work, right? We have this submit survey method, or something's matching that with submit survey on our client side or our server side, right? So that part's matching. All right, but let's look back at our index.html. So notice this method post. Well, the default is, hey, I can hear something coming from a get. And so a get is basically like an open letter that anybody can see. When you like do a Google search and you see that question mark equals and some random gibberish, and then your search term, those are get requests to a Google server. Now, a post is kind of like a secret message, and so servers respond to them slightly differently. But let's run it and see what happens, just to kind of entertain ourselves. All right. Whoops. Localhost 500 is definitely not going to work. Oh, I made some other typo. So let's see what the typo is. So in our terminal, look, there's some sort of typo in here. So it ran all the way down to line 11 and said something happened before line 11 that screwed things up. All right. So here we've got this thing. So line 10, line going on over here. So let's just rerun our server. All right. So first of all, our URL needs to start with a leading slash, just like our route did. So we need to add slash there. All right. So that's the first thing. The second thing when we run it is, again, that method that we're going to run from our index.html, right? It's going to try to go to submit survey as a post. Our server.py is listening for submit survey, so that matches, but it's only listening for a get. And so again, we should say something like route does not match. So localhost 5000, there we go, submit our survey. Method not allowed. So it found the route, but it doesn't have the right method. All right. So let's give it the right method. So methods equal quote post. Great. So now we should be able to see it. So if it's a post, it also has access to this other thing, request.form. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we print out our request.form now. So now we should be able to get it. Starting over again. I'm going to type in some things this time, Mike, and I love to code at the I can't even type, at the Seattle location. Okay, submit my survey. Great. So I got this form submitted. That makes sense. So it ran, and it returned form submitted just like we returned hello world earlier. And then let's see what got printed out. So the printouts, when you print from our server side, are going to show up on our terminal. And so they're going to show up right there. Fantastic. Should be good to go. And it's a great way to debug as well. So if you put print statements, when you stop seeing your thing printing, you know that the error is above that. Awesome. Well, here's what got printed. Like, I got a comment. I love to code at the Seattle location, a name Mike, a language is JavaScript, and a location Seattle. And all of those things are in this immutable dictionary object. So it's a dictionary object, so I bet we could access things by their keys. So like request.form, square brace, comment should have returned I love to code at the Seattle location. So if we tried to print that. So let's just see what happens. So this thing, request.form, I am an immutable dictionary type object. Kind of like a tuple with keys is how one can think about that. So now we can print pieces of it. Request.form, and it has a key, and one of the keys is comment. Another one is name, another one is language, another one was location. Great. All right, so far so good. Hopefully it's fairly clear. So let's go ahead and give this a whirl. Going back over to our awesome page. There we go. So we don't care about the name. We don't care about the JavaScript in Seattle. And this is a comment. And hopefully we'll see just this is a comment because it's now accessing the key value pair and getting the value out. And this is the value that's highlighted in blue. So when we submit survey, again, form submitted, everything worked. And we want to look at our terminal. So we printed the whole thing. And then we printed just the value that was stored in this key comment. Great. So things are over to our server side. And so the next piece of this kind of dojo survey assignment is to pass things back to the client side. And the things that we've highlighted so far kind of have three different ways of passing information back. And I'm only going to do one of them. I'm going to really encourage you to do the other one, or other ones. All right. So the one we're going to use is passing information directly back and rendering a template right away from a post. It's generally a little bit bad form to do this. Often you pass information either with Flash or with Session. And so I'm going to have you play around with those things and then use a redirect. I'll set up the redirect for you, but I won't set up the session stuff after I kind of do this bit of the demo. All right, so here we go. So we're going to return redirect, and we're going to say we're going to render it. Whoa, I don't want to redirect. Sorry, we're going to render a template here, and we're going to render results.html, just like we did index.html over here. We're going to go over to results.html. So obviously we need a results.html page. New file, results.html. Fantastic. And again, oops. And then we'll say this results. And let's just print out a few things. Again, I'm not going to do any styling. We're going to print out name. And this double curly braces is part of the Jinja 2. So basically, when the results.render runs, this whole thing right here, basically says, hey, I'm going to go look at this page before I send it back to the client, and anything in curly braces, if I have a name variable, I'm going to use it and replace that name variable with the value that's in there. If I don't have a name variable, I'm just going to ignore it. Similarly, if we have curly braces and percentage signs, it does kind of the same thing, except this means I'm going to do logic instead of just printing it. So print logic. But both of them happen before it gets sent back to the client. So let's say if 1 equals 1. then I'm going to in the if statement, and I'm going to say, yay, 1 is 1. So this should be true, right? I might have mistyped. It might be a double equals, but we'll test that in a second. Let's do not equal 1 first. If 1 does not equal 1, then we're not going to get anything. And let's do 1 equals 2. Okay, so this is true. 1 does not equal 2. So, yay, 1 is not. 2 should show up, and name should not show up. Because, well, look at our server.py. Nowhere in here do we have a name. Specifically, nowhere in here, in this scope, do we have a name set up. And to get a name, we'd actually have to pass it. We'd have to pass it like that. And we'll do that in just a quick second. All right, so we should see the same prints when we do this thing, and then we should hopefully see our 1 does not equal 1, our 1 does not equal 2 comment show up as well. All right, so let's give this a shot. Shoo! Okay, so localhost 5000. Blah, 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 blah. Submit. All right, yay, there's 1 is not equal 2, and that's all we see printed. No name, no nothing, no errors. Great. Cool. So let's see if we can get a name to print up. So let's just do this. Let's pass this thing name equals Mike. And again, we still have this request.form, and we have all these pieces of request.form. I wonder if I could actually set things dynamically rather than like hard coding in Mike. But let's just hard code in Mike for now. So notice this name is getting passed to this template. And so this template's like, hey, I've got access to this name variable here. And so now I can use it right there. So let's see what happens. So we're going to do this thing. All right, so blah, 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 submit survey. All right, whoops. Oh, there's Mike printing out, sorry. I should have made a new line to make that clearer. Made a P tag or an H1 tag or something. So let's just do that. So let's put this thing in an H1 tag. So now my name's going to be bold, clear, and it'll be obvious as to what happened. All right. Refresh this. So refreshing that, and there we go. All right. So I basically resubmitted that post. And that's the reason that you want to do a redirect. All right. So I'm not going to do all of them. I'm going to let you go forth and do that. But I'm just going to do one of them. So rather than name equals Mike, why don't we pass request.form, and we can pass in the name that we got from that request.form. So we printed request.form over here. We saw this whole dictionary, and now I'm going to piece out a piece of that dictionary and send that over. All right, so let's give that a shot and see what happens. And then I'm going to try one more thing before I kind of let you, well, I'll show you one more thing and then let you loose on your own to play with session. All right, so let's go ahead and read this. So, all right, so blah, 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 blah. Submit the survey. And I'm going to put Mike at the end of this with capitals. So hopefully the name that's going to be coming over in request.form name is ASCSF and then capital Mike. And there we go. And now we're seeing that we're passing that through. All right. What happens if we actually pass in the entire dictionary? I haven't done this for a while, so it's probably going to break and cause some sort of craziness. But what if we just pass in request.form? So request.form itself is a dictionary with keys and values, right? And so let's just, I'm going to see what happens. So bear with me. And this is a big part of programming, and kind of understanding what's going on, is trying things. And so don't be afraid to try stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to go back to localhost 5000. And it's probably going to break. No big deal. Blah, blah, blah. But it might not, which would be cool. And the reason it might not is because Python is looking for, and Jinja 2 is looking for keys, like name, and values associated with each other. And because we're passing it a dictionary, it may be able to parse that thing out. And I'm going to call this Mike 2 failure, question mark. Oh, so there we go. So didn't really like that thing. So fair enough. All right, so name equals request.form. Cool. So, name. And again, you could pass every single piece of that. So you could do name, locations, survey, or language, comment if you wanted to, and then print them all out. So just like we printed Mike here, or the name here, you could do another H1 and be like, okay, well, I'm going to pass in a variable that we're going to call snark. And snark is actually, so there's the variable name, is equal to the request.form bracket comment. So whatever gets passed over to our rendering page has to match there. So this matches this. So let's see that work really quickly. Blah, blah, blah. Snarky comment. And there's the snarky comment. Held in the variable called snark, not in the variable called comment. Great. So now the next tricky part. And I'm not going to do all of it, but I'm just going to show you how to do it. So as I said, you don't really want to have this method be refreshed, because let's say you were building an e-commerce site or something and somebody just bought your $5,000 awesome object, painting or whatever, and you refresh, they would have bought 2 of them at that point. And they probably would not be so happy, and you get really bad customer comments, and there'd be some anger and some refunds and some crying. Yeah, so no good. So we want to try to avoid that. All right, but we could have passed them through like this, and that can be very useful to kind of pass information back and forth. But another way to do it is say, hey, well, rather than render this template, why don't we redirect somewhere else? And let's redirect to view page. All right, so this is a redirect. So this is just going to be a get type method that could be reused. So app.route, and we need to make a new route for it called view page, and then we have to have it do something. So def do something. Again, these names can be arbitrary, and I'm intentionally misnaming them and poorly naming them, but just to kind of point out that they can be arbitrary. But now we can return render template and go ahead and render our results.html here. Notice we no longer have access to this request.form anymore. So now if we print request.form, right, it was locally scoped to here. This is not only is it not a post method, it's a get method, so request.form totally doesn't exist. So it's going to cause it's actually going to cause an error. So let's go ahead and watch that happen. So basically we said, go here, do some logic maybe, and then, well, in this case we didn't do any logic, we just printed some stuff, and then try to go here as a get. All right, so we're now going to hit this thing. I'm going to print a bunch of stars beforehand, just to kind of clarify. And I'm trying to print them afterwards. And just like I was saying about the error catching stuff, what I'm hoping to see is these 50 stars. I'm going to print star asterisks or star exclamation points, just to kind of clarify that it's this one that's breaking and not this one. All right, so let's go ahead and go do that. All right, cool. Oh no, I screwed something up. All right, let's see what I screwed up. Oh, so just like before, I saved it somewhere in between with some invalid syntax. Now it's back up and running. Up arrow is how I just did that so quickly. So going back to my survey, great. So let's say my name is Donut. Yeah, Donut. Oh, sure, whatever. Here's my comment, blah, blah, blah. Submit my survey. All right. Oh, so our view page actually worked. So that makes some sense, maybe. All right. So we have an immutable dictionary. Let me think about that. Okay, so the older version of Flask did not allow you to do this. The newer version of Flask does. Interesting. Okay. So request.form is just an empty dictionary. It still existed. All right, but it's empty now. So notice it was all this cool information. Now we don't have access to at least the pieces inside of it. So cool. All right, so if we wanted to kind of get something from over here and get it over to our new page, well, rather than doing this variable like we're doing, like name and snark, let's try another type of variable. We'll put this as an h2 tag, and we're going to make this variable called a session variable. So session bracket quote name. All right, but we don't have a session bracket name just yet. So let's just refresh that page. And notice that it didn't break, but nothing showed up. So let's make a session name and see what gets printed out. So on our server.py, we might want to do something like, hey, session bracket quote name is equal to request.form bracket quote name. So we have all the request.form stuff over here right now. And so now we can create these session variables. This is just another dictionary, actually, that you access by name values or a dictionary-like object. And then you can go and get and set it to whatever you want. In this case, we're going to set it to request.form name. You know, we could have set it to Mike and hard-coded it again. So let's see what happens when you redo this thing. So we're going to start from localhost 5000. Great. And Jellybean, I don't know why I'm making them totally not name-like names. All right, and there's Jellybean getting printed out as a session variable. Now, what's kind of weird about session is that it doesn't get cleared out. So if we refresh this page, it's still going to be Jellybean. Refresh it again, still going to be Jellybean. Whereas had we done that with a post, this would have gotten cleared, potentially. So, all right. So I think I'm going to stop it there and let you play around with it. But this kind of theme is going to be occurring pretty much all the way through Ninja Gold, kind of this whole passing information around. So if you wanted it to clear out every time, try using Flash. So you might have to search for Flash messages and how to do it, but that'd be the next case. So if you use a Flash type message, when you do this refresh, this Jellybean is going to disappear. And so I would say do Dojo Survey all three ways. Do it directly as a post, kind of like what we talked at the beginning. Then do passing it, making session variables, and then doing it with Flash. And that should get you part of the way. All right, cool.